Baylor narrowly falls to Houston 61 to 65. Not necessarily the prettiest of game, guy. I think we saw, I will say there was some nice displays of defense throughout this game, particularly in the second half, but just a lot of missed shots down the stretch. The Stars still came out to play. VJ Edgecombe had honestly a huge game against this like really stout defense and almost single-handedly kept his team in it with 23 points, 9 for 10 from the free throw line. Thought he got into the paint at will and yeah, almost willed Baylor to victory and what could have been a nice momentum shifting win that would have definitely helped their tournament seeding. But what did you see out of this game from either school?
Well, I thought Houston, I mean, you want to talk about defense, that's what they do.
Hmm.
They held this Baylor team to shooting below 34% from the field, 31% from three. A lot of that was because Rob Wright had a difficult game, but 1 for 9 from the field, 1 for 3 from him. But they were able to quiet Jaden Nunn from three. They were able to stop Jalen Celestine from three. Celestine was a guy who I talked about in the preview a lot as a guy who I really like, transfer from Cal. Uh, he is a knockdown shooter, and if you're able to stifle him at all, it's a good game. Ultimately, they lose on that missed shot by VJ Edgecombe. My guy Valdez just way off on that one. That goes in. It's a 1 point game with a foul, guaranteed a one possession game with about 6 seconds, 8 seconds left. Could have been interesting.
Hmm.
Uh, doesn't end up working like it is. Ball goes loose, and that's all she wrote. But the guy who I'm really want to point out on Houston isn't the guy who you think I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about LJ Cryer. I'm going to talk about Milos Uzan distributing the basketball. Now, the stat sheet won't say it. He only had 3 assists, but if you see the way that he was initiating action in this game, you can see just the way that this offense is able to run through him. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
Hmm.
They're a well coached, well disciplined team. Obviously, it's Kelvin Sampson. That's what he does. But just I think this is the perfect fit, I think, that you'll see for him.
Yeah, Uzan, I thought he started the game off pretty shaky. Like his lower field goal percentage for him, 5 for 13 from the field, 1 of 6 from three. Not the typical game that we've been seeing out of him. Like he had been on a bit of a heater going into this one, but I thought hit those back-to-back pull-up jumpers in the second half that felt very timely. The first stretched the lead to 5, the second pushed the lead to 9. And I know Houston, I think they got the lead to as big as 10 in the second half. Weren't able to hold on. Their offense really stalled out. Like I don't know if you noticed this guy, they had no field goals the last 6 minutes of the second half. They still averaged, get this, they shot 57% from the field in the second half, but somehow like didn't make a field goal in the final 6 minutes. Still averaged, I think even like 1.3 points per possession in the second half. I don't know how that checked out. They shot, I believe, 6 or 7 free throws down the stretch, but that was the only offense they could get. And like watching this game play out, because I in the preview I said I think Baylor's defense is truly a lot better than you would think, given their lack of size and just how guard reliant they are. And I wouldn't say. I mean, you see guys like Langston Love and VJ who definitely have like the size and the physicality, and with Edgecombe the athleticism by far to be an elite impact defender. I'm just not entirely sure they put it all together yet, but I thought both of them were really solid defensively in this one. And Jaden Nunn has always been able to cause havoc with his active hands. Like I thought those three really held their own on the perimeter. I mean, Omer I guess does what he can, but he still cleans the glass really well. Kind of the story of his career. We can get bullied a little bit in like one-on-one post defense. But yeah, like Baylor played good enough defense to win this game, but the story as it's been all year, like, well, they forced Houston into really tough shots. I mean, I think even down the stretch, I want to say that they had cut the lead to 4, and LJ Cryer took like just a really bad step back three. And I get he had been hot like for the first half. He'd only made 1 3 in the second half. Like they were forcing Houston into tough shots, turning them over a little bit here and there. But it was just they couldn't get anything going on offense outside of VJ. A lot of mid-rangers, a lot of shots at the rim were just eradicated by Joseph Tugler. And then on the other end, I mean, you mentioned it, Uzam made enough plays down the stretch. He was getting guys good looks. guys ultimately got to the free throw line. But yeah, I was surprised at least seeing that stat about the Houston offense stalling out. But I think it honestly points to like how good this Houston team is that they still pulled the game out.
I mean, yeah, this Houston team is certified wagon. What I thought was interesting about this game as well is the pace of play. I mean, obviously we know Houston is going to play a much slower game than usual. Uh, I also had the Utah BYU game this weekend. Utah in that game shot 72 field goals. Houston in this game took 50. Uh, that is a very big difference in the pace that Houston is playing at.
Mm.
Uh, and I do think that that is something of note in March because I've been in on a lot of Houston teams in the past years, and I've generally they've come up short in March.
Mm.
Uh, why does that happen? It's got to be pace of play because if there are fewer possessions, and there's more variability that can happen. I think that this is the team that bucks that trend because I think that this team is so disciplined, they milk the most out of every single
Mhm.
possession. So even though there are few, they are maximizing it. While teams that play quicker, their goal isn't to maximize the the possession. Their goal is to get more shots up because they trust that they'll make those shots.
Mhm. Mhm.
This Houston team forces you to slow down. Baylor doesn't play the fastest in the world, but they typically don't play super slow.
Mhm.
I mean, you'll see VJ. There were a couple times this game where I just yelled at the TV, Valdez Edgecombe, you are a bad man. And I was sitting alone in my room watching this. Uh,
I mean, that dunk he had where like he literally it was
oh,
almost on the free throw line was sick.
that poster was absurd. Like the fact that you can have a player as quick, as dynamic as VJ Edgecombe, and for the most part, apart from select plays, slow him down. That is all you need if you're a Houston fan to be excited about this team in March. They're talking about these 19 straight road wins, whatever.
19 straight road wins is insane, man.
I know,
It was
but
15 straight.
oh,
Should we say it's 19 so we can build we'll start we need to build a Houston audience. I know we have a little bit of one, but I'll start pumping some Cougs propaganda.
I love this Houston
I do
team.
too. I'm glad we're aligned on that because I honestly feel like I was on an island saying like beating my chest that this team can win a national title. To your point on the pace, this is like oddly enough, it's the per Ken Palm at least, it's the slowest paced Kelvin Sampson team. They're 361st in tempo out of 363 teams. Conversely, though,
It's
it's the
364, Riley.
no, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It's really 364.
It's 360. I'm on Ken Palm right now. It's 364.
It's
Added Mercyhurst and West Georgia this past year and got rid of one of the teams in Pennsylvania.
when we get a sponsor, I'll make enough money to care about 300 teams 363 and teams 364. I feel
Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Mississippi Valley State
they,
are amazing.
they matter. They do. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to the SWAC teams. I love the SWAC. I care about the SWAC. I don't care about these new teams. I don't care about West Georgia or Mercyhurst. But yeah, they're 361st in the country. But like you said, they can still get it done. And I think what's even more impactful, like how they get away with it, this is Sampson's best 3-point shooting team, like by percentage, 39.7% on the year. And I think that's a really deadly combo when you factor in how they limit your possessions. They make you play the full shot clock. They're so physical. They're so disruptive. They can switch 1 through 5, or they can hard hedge ball screens. And they're so disciplined when it comes to tagging the roller to make sure there are no easy shots at the basket. If the ball swings out, they're they got length and athleticism to close out hard on shooters. And a team like Baylor, they got them a little bit in the first half. We're knocking down a few more threes, shot a decent percentage. Kelvin Sampson adjusted. I believe they didn't have a single second chance point in the first half and turned that around in the second as well. But those second chance points, of course, the offensive glass, what Houston is known for, that's the other, I would say, other part of the recipe that's really important for their March chances. Is how they limit your possessions, and on the other end, they're going to extend theirs. Even if they have like a low total number of possessions, they will extend it on the offensive glass. And when you have just bigs who can clean it up on the glass and kick it out to guards and wings who can knock down those step in threes. I just think like they can muck it up, but they can also score in a hurry because they're it's such a good shooting team.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about the bigs. The guy who I want to talk about is JoJo Tugler. Uh,
JoJo
First off, Riley, how many Rob Wrights do you think you could fit in one JoJo Tugler wingspan?
probably like 3 or 4.
I know his arms are so long. I mean, it's no wonder why he's able to be the best defensive player in college basketball. But he is the perfect guy because the way that this Houston team runs their defense is the way that they close out on three-point shooters is they fly by. They don't do the thing where you chop your feet and you stop and you try to stay in front. They fly by because they know that they have the help defender next to them. That is because you have JoJo Tugler. JoJo Tugler is a guy who, when you fly by, the guy pump fakes it. He doesn't, he tries to take a couple steps in for the mid range.
Hmm.
JoJo Tugler can be in the restricted area, and it feels like he's right on top of you if you're on the 3-point line just because of how long his arms are. His deterrent of guys getting in close into the paint is so huge. And I'm not typically a big X's and O's guy when it comes to, specific defensive arrangements. I'm for the most part, I'm like, oh, if a certain player is really talented, this makes it a good then they'll be good on defense. This Houston defensive scheme is so perfect for JoJo Tugler. And I mean, there's really no way to beat it other than just being an elite shooter.
Hmm.
Turning a corner almost doesn't help. It's that great because I mean, yes, you can drive, try to draw a foul, see what you can do. He can block a shot really well.
Hmm.
But if you turn a corner, you have to pull up from right after you make the space and take that long two
Right.
because of how imposing he is.
Hmm.
And that's just a little thing that makes Houston so not even sneaky good, but like even better than just what we get from them year in, year out is because of Tugler's presence on that scheme. And that's why I'm picking this team deep into my bracket.
Yeah, I might have a very chalky bracket this year. I really like the teams that are projected to be one seeds. Houston is right there. Like they have this could be the year where they get. I mean, you could already say they've gotten over the hump with a Final Four. What was that? Almost 4 years ago. Like Kelvin Sampson has a Final Four. That's a huge accomplishment.
Wasn't that the same year that Baylor won the national title?
Yeah, it was. Baylor smoked him in the Final Four. A little revenge, but I think we're pretty aligned on Houston. I do want to talk about the Bears just because. Oh man, I'm like this is a national. I mean, we just mentioned it. This is a national championship caliber program for a solid 2 to 3 year stretch. They were sort of the it program in the sport, and you don't want to have moral victories. I'm sure their fan base is frustrated right now, where barring kind of an insane run, you're looking at 4 straight years of not making the second weekend. I really struggle to see this if they project as like an 8 or a 9 seed. I don't think they're going to get by a 1 seed. But would you say you view this team any differently? Just seeing them kind of take it to Houston for at least like, I mean, they gave Houston all it could handle for 40 minutes. They just came up a little short at the end. Like, where are you at on this Baylor team?
I've been in the same place on this Baylor team. Since I realized that they weren't actually a top 10 team in the country at the start of the year. I admit I had them, I think, seventh to start the year, something like that.
Hmm.
This is Baylor can go 1 for 1 with you, 2 for 2, 3 for 3, 4 for 4, 5 for 5, 6 for 6, 7 for 7, without Ojonwuna not 8 for 8, right? But they have seven of the best basketball players in the like. If you go seven deep, this is one of the best teams in the country. Uh, the problem is depth.
Hmm.
Once you get past Langston Love, Jalen Celestine, right? The Rob Wright, Jaden Nunn, right? Whoever it is, you want to say as the sixth or the seventh guy on this team.
Hmm.
I mean, there's really not. I mean, there's in this game, those 8 players played. It was the seven I mentioned. The eighth was Marino. Dub Dubrovcic, who is averaging half a point and half a rebound on the year. We've seen Jason Osemoda at other points during the year, but
Honestly.
for the most part, their contributions have been nowhere near the level of the core eight, really.
Hmm.
But with Ojonwuna's injury, the core seven. And you've had Roach hurt at points throughout the year. You've had Love hurt at points throughout the year. They the depth is what kills them. Guys can't get a break.
Yeah, the Roach side of things is really the most confounding because he missed 4 games with the concussion, and there's part of me that's like, has he just not been the same since? But his first game back against Texas Tech, this was early February, he played 38 minutes, but his minutes have he's only cracked 30 minutes once since then, and it was against Oklahoma State. And it just seems like it's a only played 12 minutes in this one. I just kind of wonder what's going on there if they just like what they get out of Love better when you kind of factor in some of what he can do defensively, and if you're gonna, I mean, Wright sees that starting point guard role, Edgecombe you're not benching, so yeah, maybe it is like Love can do a little bit more defensively because of his size, and Roach has never really
Well,
been a good defender throughout
Jaden
his
Nunn is I think Jaden Nunn has always been the guy who I've looked at as a guard on this team
career. Hmm.
more favorably than Roach, just because of what he's able to provide defensively.
Hmm.
Edgecombe is always going to start. Nunn can play the one, but he's really more of a two. And I I just think when you look at this team, there are options that fit what Scott Drew is trying to do as a basketball coach more than Jeremy Roach.
Hmm.
Jeremy Roach is going to be an A-level scorer. Maybe you rush him back from the concussion, but with this, the bubble being as terrible as it is, who's the last team in now? Boise State, Xavier, right? Whoever you're
Like,
uh, one loss in the Big 12, Indiana, one loss in the Big 12 tournament isn't going to drop you below those two. I would be interested to see if they give Roach the time off, time to rest and recover to see if he can be just like that. Because going offense, defense with Nunn and Roach in the tournament, I think would be a good thing, being able to get Roach's shooting in there. Uh, but I think really the guy who's pushed Roach off is just Celestine being as efficient of a shooter as he has been. Because Celestine is just he's a pure shooter. In this game, he took 6 shots, all of them were threes.
mhm.
Roach has been known as a shooter for a while. I mean, not just a shooter, right? He's a scorer in
Yeah, big
many
time.
different
Like he's at
ways.
big time
Yeah.
moments too. Like I
No,
don't know. I'm
he's a great scorer, but I think the j- his niche on this team, I mean, not niche, but right, his
his niche.
role on this team a lot niche. It's we're civilized. His
I would
uh
say something that's niche is different than him finding his niche, though.
I guess yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh you used it as a different part of speech. But I think Roach I don't want to say calling card, but what he is best at with regard to this system is shooting. And you need size, and Celestine gives you that size more than Roach does, and I think that's really what's forced him out of the lineup.
Fair point. I still think I probably wouldn't give up on him completely just ahead of the tournament just because he's had big moments in March before. We'll see if Scott Drew presses any different buttons in the Big 12 tournament this week. But for now, I mean, Houston can hang its hat on yet another quality road win.